What's up, friends? So today we're going to be checking out a new 2021 film that just came out on HBO Max called Those Who Wish Me Dead. So Those Who Wish Me Dead is a film with a runtime of an hour and 40 minutes and is directed by Taylor Sheridan. So Taylor's actually done a couple of really good films before. Wind River, for example, is a fantastic film that I highly recommend. Very dark though. Taylor's also made Without Remorse and Sicario. All great films. So Those Who Wish Me Dead stars Angelina Jolie as Hannah Faber, the main character, as well as a couple of my favorites, Jon Bernthal, who is the Punisher in Netflix's The Punisher, but he plays the role of Ethan in this film. And then Nicholas Hoult, who was in one of my favorite films ever, Mad Max, but he's in this film as Patrick. We also have Finn Little, who plays the role of Connor, and then Tyler Perry's in this film, Aidan Gillen is in this film, Jake Weber's in this film, as well as a couple others. But the story mainly focuses around Angelina Jolie, Jon Bernthal, Nicholas Hoult, and Finn Little, and their experience. Another character that I think isn't described as much in the cast list, but who I thought really did a fantastic job, was Medina Senghor, who plays Allison, Jon Bernthal, aka Ethan's wife in this film. She kills it. But anyway, talking a little bit about what exactly this film's about. So Those Who Wish Me Dead follows the life of Angelina Jolie as she's a smoke jumper. And what a smoke jumper is essentially they're a part of the fire and rescue squad that jumps into flames and smokes and wildfires to rescue people, to set up, flame retardants, to overall help the stop of the spread of flame. One thing you need to know about this job is, already if I put the words fire and skydiving in the same sentence, you gotta know it's gonna be dangerous, right? So these type of people, the people who have this quite frankly awesome but dangerous job, every day risk their lives jumping into smoke and dealing with such a dangerous situation, So essentially, Those Who Wish Me Dead details the life of Angelina Jolie and Jon Bernthal, Hannah and Ethan, as they work to protect Connor, a kid that Hannah finds in the forest wandering, who is lost, traumatized, and is being hunted down by these relentless killers because Connor holds some pertinent information about his dad and his dad's work that they're trying to erase. And I think the first thing I have to warn about this film is that there's no justification in this film. And I think that's one of the biggest sinks in this film altogether. And I'm going to mention it at the beginning because I know there's a lot of people that aren't even going to consider watching a film if this is the case. And so I just need to warn you beforehand. It is very difficult to find out the reasoning as to why these killers are chasing Connor. And so what I mean by that is, through this entire movie, you're gonna see these killers do quite outrageous, crazy things, right? And they're professionals, expected. But you're gonna see them do so much and go through so much distance. And the entire time, you're not gonna have any idea as to what information Connor holds and why they're after him. There's a couple lines in the film somewhere that give a little bit of insight into why exactly this is all happening, but the film does not focus on that. The film does not resolve that in any way. So in that sense, if you're the type of person where you search for justification, you search for some sort of meaning and reasoning, you're not going to find that in this film. And so that might actually end up annoying you quite a lot. If you're just here for a good time to watch an action movie and kick back, you might like this film. So in terms of genres, I would say this film falls very much into like a thriller, action, survival film. It's focused on essentially the survival of Connor, right? And Hannah and Ethan work to protect Connor from all that's coming after him. But essentially it is a survival film in that sense. The film also easily shows you good versus evil and what a good person versus an evil person is. So in that sense, it's very easy to distinguish who's the good guy and who are the bad guys in this film. In terms of characters, I'm gonna preface by saying the acting is alright. It's sufficient. It's enough to where all the characters are built out. They are realistic enough and lovable enough to where you're gonna root for the good guys, essentially. The characters aren't developed enough or intricate enough to where you're gonna fall in love with any of them, I don't think. They're very, I hate to use the word cliche, but they are very cliche characters. They're very straightforward, very expected, and predictable characters. So in that sense, if you're looking for something deep, something with stunning acting, this might not be the film for you. Most of the characters have relatively limited backstories. You have a good sense as to who Angelina Jolie, Hannah Faber, is. You have a good sense as to who Hannah Faber is and her story, a little bit of her backstory and the difficulties and the trauma she's dealing with. And that's a big motivation as to what makes her want to help Connor and want to help the situation. But beyond that, all the other characters have very limited justification, very limited character development. So if you don't like Angelina Jolie, you're most likely not going to like anyone else in this film. But again, you don't have to like the characters to enjoy the ride. It is a fun action movie, low stakes. So if you're here for that, then this might be the perfect film for you. I will say Hannah and Connor and Ethan together are an awesome team. The bad guys in this film are also very driven and they're ruthless to a pretty crazy extent. The two characters are so different from each other that they end up being a pretty solid team together. But they're very, again, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's so hard to tell why exactly they're so driven to do what they're doing, especially after things get very complicated. Then it's very hard to justify why they're still in the game, why they're still sticking with it. And the movie offers very limited reasoning. In terms of if this movie holds your attention or not, I would say it most definitely will. It's very fast-paced, moves on quickly. It does a lot of hand-holding. So if you're a type of person who doesn't follow films very easily or always gets confused when a lot of things happen, this film might be perfect for you because it's a little bit slowed down, a little bit more simplistic, and very straightforward in terms of it shows you exactly these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, these are all the events that happen. All you need to know essentially is that Connor needs to survive. And that's it. That's all you need to know about the film. And if you watch it, it'll be easier to keep up with it. And so in that sense, I think this film would be easy to watch in the background while working on something just because it's easy to follow along. You can tune in when all the action scenes and the cool stuff is going down and just listen in on and follow along on when all the character development, which is barely existent, right? But all the character development and all the other content is going on. It is a relatively predictable film. Once you start to see where things are headed, where things are going, it's going to be obvious to tell what's going to happen next, especially if you watched a lot of action films before in your past. It's going to be very easy to predict what's going to happen in the next scene. Just because you know what's going to happen doesn't mean you're not going to enjoy watching what's going to happen. It's just, if you're the type of person where you like your movies to surprise you, if you like your movies to challenge you, this might not be the film for you. The film's also not that realistic. This is very much focused on the action and theatrics than the realism and showcasing how the situation would actually go down in real life. But it's very fast-paced, and in some situations, it's a little bit outlandish. So you just have to be the type of person to roll with it instead of overthinking it. And along that route, I think this is a movie where you really have to unplug and shut down and just watch for what it is. If you overthink it, if you start thinking at all during this movie, you're gonna hate it because there's a lot of plot holes. There's a lot of things that occur in this film that you're gonna be like, wait, doesn't that conflict with what happened before? Or wait, isn't that a step backward? Or, there's a lot of things that are gonna have you thinking like, wait a minute, what's happening right now? But you just have to sit back and watch the entire thing. So if you're a fan, if you absolutely dislike plot holes, if you absolutely dislike movies that don't fill in the holes, movies that aren't super realistic, you're not gonna like this film because it's definitely none of those. In terms of what's unique and good about this film, it has pretty solid editing, pretty solid directing, it's well shot, it's really fun to look at and engaging in that sense. So if you're heavily into the visuals and heavily into a movie just being fun, something to decompress, then this is definitely a film for you because it's very fun to watch, very entertaining. Just expect to have a good time and you'll be given that at least. Like I mentioned many times, it's an engaging but flimsy film. If you expect too much, you're gonna be disappointed. If you are thankful for what you get, if you're just happy with a relatively basic action thriller, then you're gonna like this film. It also has an awesome badass female lead who is super strong, super cool, very lovable. She doesn't need a backup. She doesn't need the male lead, Ethan. She doesn't need his help in a lot of situations. In fact, she outperforms in a lot of situations. She's just overall a badass, and that's cool and fun to see in a film like this. So in terms of who would like this film, I mentioned it a couple times before, but fans of fast-paced action films that focus on visuals over content are gonna love this film. Fans of straightforward good guy versus bad guy films, fans of a group escaping hitmen, escaping bad guys, escaping killers type of film, you're gonna like this film. It's very straightforward. Fans of also brave heroes, fans of movies where it's very clear to see who the good guys are, you're gonna automatically want to be on the good guys team. There is no doubt in your mind that the bad guys are bad guys, and so in that sense it's easy to jump on a team and follow it all the way until the end. So it's a very low stress. You don't have to worry about anything film. Fans of safeguard movies, films where it's all about protecting a package or a person. And in this case, it's a person, Connor, the kid, right? But there's a lot of films out there that just focus on, you know, protecting a package, protecting this person against all odds. And that's essentially the type of film this is. And then also fans of movies about hero firefighters. There's a lot of awesome films that showcase the life of a firefighter and the experience of a firefighter, and this movie is not one of them, I would say, just because it doesn't focus too much on the firefighting aspect. So I wouldn't expect too much in terms of firefighting content and firefighting realism in this film, but it is still a dope firefighter. You know, firefighters are some of the most noble, awesome people on this planet. Shout out to my main homie, Evan's dad, who's a firefighter and one of the greatest people I know. In terms of perfect setting for this film is relatively easy to watch anytime. It's very straightforward, as I mentioned before, stress-free in that you don't have to think about it, you don't have to do anything, you could just watch, you could just disconnect and watch, or you can work on something while watching this in the background. It's also a great film with friends, low stress. You know, if you just want to decompress in the night, maybe you guys are all turned AF. So in that sense, you don't want a film that you really have to pay attention to. It's another great film for that. Also, great family film. If you and your family likes action thrillers that are fast-paced and that aren't necessarily extremely well-built movies, but are more focused on just action, thrills, having fun, you're gonna like this film. And I do recommend it. I would say similar movies include like Skyscraper, which is the Dwayne Johnson movie. That movie I would say is relatively similar. Also like Logan, although Hannah doesn't have any special powers or anything that helps protect Connor from these bad guys. But, you know, Logan kind of has the same theme of like, he's protecting the girl from bad guys. And then movies like Commando or Terminator 2, where it's about protecting somebody from this threat that is on a path to take their lives. So overall, I wouldn't say this is a must-watch film. I would say this is a film that if you have the time, and if you love action thrillers that aren't really too focused on plot and character development and story, but more focused on thrills and action and just having fun, then this is definitely going to be the film for you. I rated it a 2 out of 4 altogether, as in it's worth picking up and it's easy to watch in the background. It's a fun time if you are out of your mind or just want to have fun altogether, but it's definitely not a serious movie, definitely not one that I would 100% recommend checking it out. So now we'll be moving on to the Parent's Guide, where I'll describe a little bit about the content of this film, so you can know if it is a good film to show to your kids, or if maybe it's something you don't want to show your kids, and vice versa. And then after that, we'll talk about a little bit about what you learn from this film. It's not much, but it's there. There's a little bit of content, a little bit of a couple nuggets of truth, so I'll talk about those. But now moving on to the Parent's Guide. So this movie is rated R, and I think it's rated R mainly for violence and language. So in terms of action, I give this film a 4 out of 5. If you are the type of person who really shies away from violence and gun violence and action and blood, you're not gonna like this film, because the bad guys in this film are very ruthless and they kill essentially on a whim. So in that sense, it can be a little bit disturbing to see like the civilians killed in that manner. They really are heartless villains. There are gunshots, bloody wounds, characters are just killed around the spot. It can be pretty gory. In terms of sexual content, I give this film a 2 out of 5. There's a couple mild sexual references, some jokes, but they're all relatively early in the film and they're pretty brief. If you don't understand what they're talking about, you're not going to get the jokes. There's a scene where woman changes briefly. It's not graphic. There's no nudity or anything. And there's a scene where husband and wife kiss, but it's really nothing too graphic or anything like that. And then finally, in terms of language, I give this film a 4 out of 5. There is a good amount of language. And specifically, I think there's about 70 F words in this film. So if you have a younger audience who isn't accustomed to language or swearing, then I would not recommend this film, because there is a good amount of it, a good amount of strong language. Ethan, John Bernthal, and the bad guys use language a lot in their discourse. And so if it's not something you're accustomed to, if it's not something you can handle, it can be a little bit off-putting. And so if language really isn't your thing, then this might not be the film for you. So all in all, if you or your family is somebody who can handle violence and language, then I'd recommend this film, because outside of that, there isn't really too much and I think the themes and the content is relatively fun and engaging and lighthearted, in the sense that it's all just a movie, it's all just fun, and it's all just created for the entertainment of the viewers. So nothing's too serious, nothing's too emotionally impactful, nothing gory or super graphic. You know, if you can handle a Die Hard movie, you can handle this film easy. And now moving on to a little bit about what we learned from this film. Again, like I mentioned, it's not too much, but I think one of the greatest or most important things this film focuses on is the idea of leaving the past in the past and learning from it, drawing from that experience, but essentially, ultimately leaving in the past. There was this strong message of like facing your fears and facing your difficulties head on in this film. Face your fears and be powerful. And you know, if there's something that inherently scares you, give it a try. Try to beat it, because you'll be surprised at what you're capable of. There's also this awesome quote that I think is crucial for anyone ever, but essentially it just goes like, creeks lead to rivers, rivers lead to towns. And I think that's essential for anyone backpacking, anyone lost anywhere, anyone traveling anywhere. Always remember that society is set up near rivers. We need our water to survive. That's just essential part of being human. So you can always bet, if you can find a stream, you can find a creek, and if you can find a creek, you can find a river, and if you can find a river, you can find a town. Just keep following the water. Always follow the water. And then the final thing it talks about or references very briefly, honestly, but it's clear to see, is just how dope smoke jumpers are. You know, firefighting is such a noble job in itself, because you're saving lives and fighting fires. Essentially, you are real life heroes. But beyond that, smoke jumpers are even cooler, because you're skydiving into fires, you know, directly into danger, solely to protect the lives of others and protect our forests. So, very noble job, very awesome. And this film does a good job of showcasing just how awesome that job really is. Altogether, I would say this film is worth checking out if you have the time and you're really into straightforward action films that have clear good guys, bad guys, that are fast-paced, quick-moving, zero stress, zero commitment. If you just like to watch films that you don't have to think about, you could, you know, decompress and just watch what happens and be entertained, then this is the perfect film for you. Let me know in the comments below if you do end up checking it out, what your thoughts are, if you liked it or not. And then like and subscribe if you like this content and you want to see more. And until next time, catch y'all later.